Welcome back to Faith, Frauds, and Falsehoods, where we explore various cults and religions of the world. Tonight we're continuing. No, we're starting a new one tonight, aren't we?
Yes.
On The Fourth Way and Sharon
Sharon
Gans.
Gans, yes.
So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help others to find us.
Hey, before we begin, let's make it clear. The opinions that we present are ours alone. They do not represent the views or opinions of our respective churches or employers. Bryan, let's get started.
Let's go. So, The Fourth Way, which...
I'm not sure that's the greatest name. Actually, I was going to talk to you about that.
Yeah, because this... Yeah, there's a lot from... Like we were talking about before we started recording, right? They kind of took some teachings from a guy who you said was Russian.
Russian mystic named Gurdan.
Yeah.
Gurdan.
And so his stuff, I think, was called The Fourth Way. This was really called School, right? Like colloquially, right? But I think they had an official name that they were, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point.
Today, they go under the name Odyssey Study Group.
Odyssey Study Group. Okay.
It's been known as school or class.
Yeah.
Actually started as a theater group.
Yeah.
Started
because she was like a aspiring actress, popular actress. She was in something.
She was an actress. She was in a few things. So we're talking about Sharon Gans. Sharon Gans was who started this group. Her and her husband Alex at the time started this group in the 1970s. They started the Everyman Theater in San Francisco. They're initially in the Mission District in San Francisco. Very popular.
You know, something about this era. We talk about this era a lot, Matt.
And California.
And California.
Things were popping in California.
Yeah,
man.
They were. Man.
I would have never thought we would end up in Texas and in Texas together. But I'm going to go on the record here. In November of 2023. We might end up in California one day.
Oh. I see. I was going to go the opposite direction and say we were sure we were never going to wind up in California.
I've seriously contemplated touring Europe and skipping France just because of, it's France.
Right.
But I would not skip California. There's a lot of cool stuff in California.
There's a lot of cool stuff in California. There's a lot of chaos in California. But
there is. But, that was my plan when I was going to graduate high school, was to move to California, Silicon Valley, and go make my millions,
There you go.
But I grew up in Texarkana.
Right.
I didn't have such opportunities.
No, we didn't.
So, yeah. So anyways, in the 1970s. But you know what? She was from New York, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to say I want to do this order. I've got something that's a little bit out of order where I'm going to jump back and forth, but it fits there, so I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah.
So in the 1970s, Sharon Gans and her husband Alex Horn, who was kind of a director, he also did some acting. He was more of a director, producer person. They started the Everyman Theater. And this was a theater group. They did theater classes and things there. And again, a popular thing in the 70s. It's the early 70s in California. We'll go more into what this group did later, but I just got to mention right here, one thing that they started being known for was that they were they charged cash only. Of course, there weren't many credit cards in the early 70s, so it would have been cash then. But they would charge $200, I think it was a week, maybe it was a month, for dues for being a part of this theater. And they were super hardcore. They also required their members to go out on the streets and sell tickets to the theater. So they had to pay in dues, and then they had to go sell so many tickets. And they were punished if they didn't sell enough tickets to the theater. So they originally at this Everyman Theater in the Mission District. However, around 1976, something happened in that theater, I believe caught fire. And so they were forced to move. They actually moved I'm sorry, y'all. I'm looking at my notes here, and I know I wrote down the notes about where they moved to.
To the Tenderloin district?
Yeah, where is that listed, though? Under
It's
what
like
year?
the fourth note, 1976. Everyman Theater burned down.
I put them out of order. That's why, because I got 78, 79 above it.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, Everyman Theater burned down. They moved to a new building in the Tenderloin district on Golden Gate Avenue in San Francisco.
Okay.
And they called it the Theater of All Possibilities.
Yeah.
Now, they were doing the same thing there, basically, under a new name, where they had classes, and they were leading this group of people. And we'll talk more about how much they kind of controlled this group of people. They were really controlling. And they also sold tickets. They were well known for going out and hitting the streets and selling tickets to the theater. Some money estimates said that they brought in as much as $20,000 a month in dues and $20,000 a month in ticket sales. Which, 1976, that's a pretty big deal.
That's a pretty big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, they was doing a pretty big deal. In 1978, a critic went and reviewed one of the plays that Alex Horne had written and Sharon Gans was performing in at the theater. And he gave it a fairly critical review. Then he got some comments. He went on a radio show, and some people called in and started talking about this group. He had never heard about the people who run the theater. He just knew this was the theater over here.
Yeah, and
he'd been around a couple of years.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to check out some of his articles?
No, not yet.
Yeah. Okay. So he started running a series of articles in the San Francisco Chronicle and another paper there, detailing what witnesses had come forward, most of them anonymously, and talked about what had happened with this group. Now, doesn't this story sound familiar?
It does.
We're in San Francisco. We're talking about a series of articles that we're running. The newspaper started digging into a group, and they start talking about control, about people being told where to live, who to marry, kids given up for adoption or being readopted, people being, couples being chosen to marry each other type stuff. And all following this secretive thing. They didn't really bring in outsiders much. This sounds very Jim Jones-ish.
Very Jim Jones-ish.
This was right after all that. And the Sharon and Alex were very sensitive about that. They didn't want to be perceived as associated with that. And so one day, they just closed. Supposedly for the holidays, but they closed and left town.
Oh, so they just picked up and moved on.
Moved to Montana.
They started getting some bad press and hightailed it out of there.
So this was, 78, 79, when the bad articles started coming. They got out of town. Closed up shop, went away. They took some of their followers with them. Some of them will pop back up later in the story. Another interesting thing happened. Sharon Gans was part of a U.S. Supreme Court case in 1978.
Oh, okay.
Cuco versus California. The California Superior Court. In that, she had an ex-husband. His name was Ezra Cuco. So in 1959, this is before she was married and met Alex. In 1959, she married Ezra Cuco on a 3-day layover on his way to Korea.
Okay.
They were both from New York, but they got married in California on his way over to Korea, on a 3-day layover on his way to ship out to Korea in 1959. He later came back from Korea, and they had 2 children, and they lived in New York together until 1972. So what is that? That's 12, 13 years right there.
Yeah.
That's a while. My wife and I will be married 12 years this year.
Oh, congrats.
Anniversary's coming up. Anyway, so they lived in New York for those 12 years, had 2 children. Then they got separated, filed official separation with the court in 1972. For some reason, Sharon then flew to Haiti and filed for divorce in Haiti. But she moved to California very soon after to marry Alex in San Francisco, Alex Horn. Yes.
How does that work?
So I'm not sure exactly why. This is something more I need to dig into about why a Haitian divorce. But she flew to Haiti for the divorce, but she had a separation agreement already in place in New York. In that separation agreement, the Ezra Kuko was going to keep the children all through the year. They're going to live with him primarily and go to school. During Christmas break, Easter break, and summer break, they would go see their mom, Sharon Gans, in California. Because they were going to go see her in California, he was to pay her $3,000 in child support. She was not to pay any child support.
Okay. That, again, doesn't make
sense, but it's the agreement they came up with.
Yeah.
And remember, the court system rarely favors the father.
Right.
Even today.
Even still.
So she was supposed to get $3,000 plus the kids on holidays, basically.
Okay.
But a little while into this, I don't know, a year or two or whatever into this, the daughter went on Christmas break, and instead of coming back, she said, "I don't want to come back. I want to stay live with my mom." So the father shipped her stuff to her and let her stay living with her mom.
Mm-hmm.
A little while after that, the mom sent a plane ticket to the son for him to fly and bring all his stuff to California, and he went to live with her. So now both kids are living with her in California. So she went back to the court in California this time and said, "Look, we had this agreement. Now the kids are living with me. I think you ought to pay me more child support." And California ruled he should pay her more child support. And by the way, in this time he was getting them during the holidays. So he was still seeing the kids. He was getting them during the holidays. Well, he protested this and said he shouldn't have to pay them more child support, not because he protested that he would owe child support, but he said that California shouldn't have jurisdiction over this because he's not a California resident. So it went to the Supreme Court. Thurgood Marshall ended up being the justice who was the
oh wow, okay, the
one who gave the opinion on this, and basically ruled that no, California had no jurisdiction upon him. That she absolutely could go file the same thing in New York and probably, win. She could file it in New York, but not California. So I just thought it was interesting. It really has nothing to do with the cult or anything, but this went all the way to the Supreme Court, and set case law. It's Kuko versus California Superior Court.
Interesting.
Isn't it, though? And I know I burned a bunch of our time talking about this, but...
Well, but it's one of those things, right? So many of the groups that we talk about, right? There's always that one little interesting nugget of how they influence the world beyond just the cult.
Right.
There's always something.
Well, this was right in the middle of basically them being called out. And we'll go into more in the social issues about these articles that were written in San Francisco.
Okay.
Wow, is there stuff in these articles? Thankfully, those have been preserved on the internet, and you can go find the original articles.
Gotta love the internet. Sometimes.
A lot of things came out. And all this was coming out, and they were fleeing town. Oh, you know what? That's important, too. It's important to know that they may or may not have actually lived in California in 1978. At some point, they left and moved to Montana.
Yep.
Her original agreement, I did read that in the summary of the case. Her original agreement did say that she had the option to move. Like, he would have to send payment to her in California, but if she were to have another address, she could update him in writing. So there's nothing that said she had to be in California for that.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes, custody agreements specify, one of the parents have to be in a certain area.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they fled to Montana. They had a house there. Eventually, they moved to New York City in the 1980s. Also, Boston. They started two groups. Mm-hmm. One group met in Boston, one met in New York City. Alex mostly led the group in Boston.
Right.
Which I find interesting because that means the couple wasn't really together all the time, They were married, but they didn't necessarily live in the same house 100% of the time. ended up having multiple houses and things.
Yeah.
The book that we were talking about was mainly from the point of view of following Sharon and talked more about her than Alex, versus a lot of the stuff you heard about in San Francisco was more focused on Alex.
Mm-hmm.
They had a little different ways of doing things. And just, we're running through our time here, but I just want to go through the rest of the timeline a little bit. So in the 1980s, they moved there, and that's what we're going to talk about. The book was mostly set in the 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000s, whenever the author finally got out of the group a little bit. In 2001, the Odyssey Study Group, which is what they called it when they moved to New York. Now, when they moved to New York, they did not call this a theater anymore.
Right.
This is where it became school. They met in a building. They would have classes. So they did all this in San Francisco, but they did it with the ostensity of, we're teaching you theater stuff. And then we're going to teach you how to be better at your life and all this, right? Well, here they just did that. Now, they did some theater stuff sometimes for fun. They did a Fight Club thing. We'll talk about that a little bit. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Fight Club.
And they did some big thing in, was it Ukraine? Well, they had a big theater type of thing. Wasn't it Ukraine?
Was it Ukraine? I'm not sure. Have you ever thought about starting an Orthodox Fight Club, Brian?
I have not, no.
That hasn't crossed your mind?
No.
We got to get with Areopagus people. Maybe they want to do that.
It was Georgia.
The country?
Yep.
Not the Yeehaw, but...
Right. Yep. Sorry. Had to look it up.
Had to look it up.
Bug me.
Okay, I was trying to go you with the Orthodox Fight Club, though.
Right.
Y'all could do some, I don't know. You don't want a Fight Club. A lot of them Orthodox priests have beards and stuff, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want a Fight Club with me with beards because they just pull up the beards.
Anyway, so 2001, the OSG...
So they actually registered as a for-profit company.
Right.
They've never really tried to hide under being a non-profit. I've not seen that at all. They're not really even calling themselves a religion. They don't call themselves a religion. Matter of fact, you could be of another religion and do this, possibly. They really aren't trying to call themselves a religious group, but as we go over their beliefs, you're going to see they really much are.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
In 2004, Sharon Gans, so she already had a place in Montana, Boston, New York, had a place in the Hamptons. In 2004, she bought a luxurious home in Mexico. San Miguel de Allende?
Allende? Mm-hmm.
Allende, there you go, Allende. San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. Y'all, I pronounce Spanish like I'm from Arkansas.
I was going to say, your mama's going to laugh at you.
Oh, man. She pronounces Spanish funny, too. She speaks it more fluently, of course, but she pronounces it funny.
That's funny.
In 2004, Alex Horne passed away.
2007.
2007, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, Alex Horne passed away. And, of course, the control of the group went to Sharon, but she already had control of the group before.
Mm-hmm.
She just kind of did more of working with the different groups together and stuff. In 2008, she bought a residence in the Plaza Hotel. The famous Plaza Hotel from famous Christmas movie everybody loves, Home Alone.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she bought a residence in the Plaza Hotel in 2008. And something we're going to go into a little more later is she often didn't buy stuff directly herself or with her company. This group tailored to when they went to New York. When they were in San Francisco, they really targeted like artists and play people and stuff. When they went to New York, they really in Boston, they really targeted young professionals, high earners, people who went to Ivy League colleges, stuff like that.
Yep. Lawyers,
investment bankers, real estate people. I know when we were studying this group, you even asked me, there's one unnamed developer. You're like, could that be a New York developer? I don't think it is. I think we have some other candidates for who that is, but but that would be the people that they targeted to get in this group. And so what's interesting about this thing where she bought some at the Plaza Hotel was they bought it as an investment, and she didn't actually buy it. So she would often form corporations with her members and companies owned by companies and that sort of thing, you know. In 2015, Sharon Gans created a will, and she excluded her own children, but included different members of the Odyssey study group. She had a very complicated relationship. So she had children with her first husband. She also had children with her second husband, possibly a child or two with somebody else.
Right.
And she was, in general, on bad terms with most of her children. This lady was crazy. When we start getting some quotes and stuff, y'all going to be like, what?
Yeah. This is just the timeline of how things kind of went. It gets real deep real quick coming up.
Yeah. I'll tell you just a little hint. There's one thing where she calls a guy up and says, hey, your wife's getting old, and I don't know she's going to have any more babies. So, you got a stepdaughter. I think she'd be willing to help you out. Y'all need to go have some babies together.
Yep.
They didn't do it, thankfully, by the way. But people rarely told her no. In 2021, Sharon Gans died from COVID-19. I think this is our first cult leader that died from COVID-19.
Yeah.
She had an estate worth quite a bit. Some estimates were that her estate was worth $3 million. Others are close to 20. Depends on who actually owned what stuff, because some of the real estate was worth more, but wasn't technically owned by her, but by the group. But there's not just one group. There's several different things. Yeah,
because the estate in Montana would be worth quite a bit.
Right. And in Mexico and all that. After her death, the cult still operates. They still exist.
Yep.
If you look at the YouTube videos, you'll see sometimes people respond a little bit. I'm not even sure those are the real cult members, but this cult's still there. Members still pay dues. Dues went up. They're now $400. Cash only, so it can all be hidden.
Yep.
There has been a class action lawsuit filed. There's been some back and forth on that. I don't think they have won that, though. In 2022, the Spencer Schneider published this book talking all about this cult. Now, this isn't the first time they've been exposed. Remember, they were exposed back in 1978. But really, from 78 to 2022, nobody said anything about all this.
Yeah, it was quiet.
Very quiet for a very long time. Mainly because they didn't, mess with senators and kill themselves in a mass suicide.
Yeah.
But there was still crazy stuff happening all that time. Well, that's people's whole lives lived.
Yeah. Well, and similar to like Scientology or Nexium, right? A lot of the things that they were teaching were building confidence and helping these young professionals to succeed.
So especially after they moved. So when they were in San Francisco, they were helping people to succeed in the play world and that sort of thing. There's a lot of people doing that back then.
Yeah.
But when they moved to New York and they went with this new tactic of helping young professionals succeed, they used the old we help each other thing. Often these groups they formed hire each other to do stuff. And they recruited talented people who had potential for things, And they required physical fitness. They required, strict things and diet and things like that. And discipline. A lot of discipline in things. Discipline will make people more successful.
That it will.
So it's been a very common thing that the group as a whole has gotten more successful. Now, as we go into some more of the details, we'll see how she ruined a bunch of their lives as well.
Right. Yeah, she did.
She was really a mad woman. And I find it interesting that Alex Horn gets very little credit for stuff. They focus more on him in San Francisco, but he's been very minimalized in the more modern telling of this story. So that's pretty much the timeline of Sharon Gans and the Fourth Way.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Matt.
All right, y'all. Till next time. Next time we'll come back and we're going to talk theology, right?
Theology teachings, yeah, because there's not going to be a whole lot of theology proper with this group, but a lot of the teachings and the ways that the rituals and things that go with it. Yep.
All right. Till next time.